I'm Bonnie, 34 years old. I used to believe that if I worked quietly enough, they'd eventually see me, but then in a PDF sent to the wrong inbox, I saw the property transfer my name wasn't there. We thought you'd be fine with it. Keeps things simple within the family. And I understood sometimes people don't forget you, they just never planned to include you. Some things break without sound. Just the shape changes. The invitation came in a forwarded message buried beneath old group threads and a subject line that read, "Updated guest list. Final." I wouldn't have noticed it if Jared hadn't handed me my coffee cup with that look, the one that means I've stopped typing for longer than I realized. The PDF was neatly formatted. Gold border. Calligraphy font. Celebrating 40 years of Gerald and Helen Whitaker. Below, that 12 names centered in bold serif. Caroline Sloane, Daniel Sloane, Jack and Lucy, aunts, uncles, even Melissa, the cousin who once locked me in a coat closet when we were 9. My name wasn't there. I read the list again slower the second time, like reading could make it different. The ceramic mug in my hand left a faint ring on the desk. I didn't wipe it, just stared at the way the heat had warped the paper underneath. The kind of mark that fades if you leave it alone, or doesn't. I called. Her voice came quick pre-smoothed. "Maybe it's best if you sit this one out. Keeps things from getting tense." There was no follow-up. No, "I'm sorry." No question of how I was. Only the soft click of the call ending followed by my reflection in the black screen. On Facebook, Caroline had already posted the floral arrangements. White roses, navy linen napkins, golden chairs in a semicircle. Caption, family. First, grateful, hot. I recognized the dining hall. It was the same one where we held Grandma Edith's wake. I had stood by the dessert table, then holding a half-empty plate of lemon bars while Caroline spoke about legacy. Her voice, clear and confident, rose over the room like it had a right to. Back at the office, Jared passed behind my chair again. His voice was quiet. "They did it again, didn't they?" I didn't answer. Just slid the mouse across the screen until the document disappeared. There's a blouse I keep wearing too often ivory with faint pink cuffs. It used to be crisp. Now the seams at the shoulders are softening, giving way like paper rubbed too many times. Today I wore it again. Not because it looked good, but because it didn't ask for anything. I opened my inbox, clicked on a project brief, scrolled without reading. The ring from the coffee cup was still there, and for the first time I didn't move it. Some people are written out before they even learn to hold the pen. There's a way of nodding that looks like agreement, but feels like erasure. I used to keep a folder labeled "just in case." It held draft cover letters, printouts of GRE vocabulary lists, and a checklist I copied from Caroline's graduate school application. I never opened it with intention, just out of habit. The folder wasn't about belief. It was about having something to point to at dinner. That year, I printed brochures for a local crafts fair, edited 3 websites, and built a mailing list from scratch. At Thanksgiving, I mentioned none of that. Instead, I unfolded the test prep packet beside the mashed potatoes, like it was proof of fluency in a language they spoke better. Caroline was reviewing abstracts for a medical conference in Denver. She placed her tablet on the table without looking up. Mom passed the cranberry sauce without a word. There's a pair of black flats in the corner of my closet, with cracked insoles and peeled edges. I only ever wore them to family functions. They matched the navy skirt my mother favored for photos, the one that didn't wrinkle on camera. I never liked the way it felt at the waist, but I never said so. Once I had a fever low dull, but I still went to her house to fix the printer. The error light blinked like it was waiting to be understood. I handed her the stack of printed pages, and she flipped through them briskly. "You still haven't finished that book I gave you." There was no pause, no glance at my face. My father once paused in the hallway holding my 1099 form in 2 fingers like it might stain. Freelance isn't a career. It's just what people call being lost. I didn't answer, just folded the paper again and slipped it back into its envelope. In the hallway mirror, my reflection never quite looked like it belonged to me. The lipstick was always slightly off, too pale, too precise. I memorized lines to repeat when someone asked what I did. "Oh, it's just a small side thing, nothing big." Then I'd grip the hem of my sleeve under the table, counting each stitch. Some people rebel by breaking rules. I broke by following them too closely, and even then I was never really seen. There's a kind of forgetting that doesn't erase you. It just smooths over where you used to be. I still have the card. Pale green embossed daisies, the kind sold in bulk. Inside it reads, "To Caroline and family, wishing you joy, always." Nothing handwritten, just a small printed label in the bottom right corner. From Helen and Gerald. That year I turned 27. The envelope had no stamp, no pen marks. It must have been slipped under the wrong door, or maybe not meant for me at all. I kept it in the back of my drawer beneath folded receipts and an expired insurance card. At the university's annual recognition banquet, I stood near the back of the hall, holding a glass of ginger ale. Caroline's name lit up the projection screen, a white serif against a navy background. Clinical excellence in women's health. The usher brushed past me, nodding. "Could you bring out the dessert trays from the left wing? Guests are seated." I didn't correct him. I just moved aside. No one turned to look. There's a chair at my parents' house, carved oak cushion, replaced 3 times. It used to be mine. At dinner one evening, Uncle Ron patted it, looked at Caroline. "This one's always yours, sweetheart." Mom didn't object. Dad poured more wine. The week I signed my first $3,000 contract, I called home. I held the phone with my elbow while sealing shipping labels, the tape catching my sleeve. Her voice came through crisp and clipped. "You still haven't gone back for your degree, have you?" I didn't mention the check in my hand. There's a green lighter I keep in my kitchen drawer. I don't smoke. I just like the click it makes. When Caroline visits, she borrows it for candles and never returns it to the same place. Each time I find it moved, under the dish rack, behind the flour jar, once in the freezer. I never say anything. I just put it back where I had it before. Sometimes I think about that card again, the one addressed to someone else, without a name or note or trace of handwriting. Maybe it wasn't meant for me. Maybe that was the point. And maybe absence isn't always loud. Sometimes it just comes pre-folded, sealed, and sent. Sometimes the erasure isn't sudden, it's already done by the time you notice. The PDF came through an old email I hadn't checked in months, one I used years ago for loan applications and freelance invoices. The subject line read, "Property Transfer Record, Clark Residence, 1987. I clicked it without knowing why. Habit, maybe. It opened to a legal document. Parcel number, coordinates, assessed value. Page 3 held the names. Caroline Whitaker Sloan. Daniel Sloan. No Bonnie. No also known as. My name wasn't there. There's a brass key I keep on a blue ribbon tucked into the back corner of my nightstand. It used to open the garden gate at the Clark house, the one with the fig tree I climbed every summer until I was 13. That gate's gone now. The tree, too. But I kept the key long after the gate rusted off its hinge. I dialed the number without thinking. Her voice came after the second ring, low and even. You don't use the house. Carolyn has children. There was a pause long enough to imagine a different response. It never came. His voice, when I called the landline, was clearer than I expected. There's no written agreement. Let's not turn this into something dramatic. I didn't know what this was. Later, a message blinked across my screen. Caroline. We thought you'd be fine with it. It keeps things simple. No need to make a fuss within the family. I didn't reply. There's a ceramic bowl on my kitchen counter, chipped along the edge. It used to hold lemon slices during tea, but now it holds loose change. Quarters, paper clips, a screw from a drawer I never fixed. I never throw the bowl away. Something about the crack, how it still holds weight just differently. I sat at my desk, reading the document again, tracing the empty space where my name could have been. Not crossed out. Just never written. No anger came. No protest. Only the quiet recognition of something already decided. The key on the blue ribbon still fits nothing. But I haven't let it go. Some things are lost long before they're taken. Not everything ends with a bang. Some things just stop echoing. There's a certain quiet that comes not from peace, but from no longer trying to be heard. I opened the shared calendar first. It still had color-coded reminders: Caroline's recital dinner, Dad's university retirement, Lucy's piano competition. I clicked through the months slowly, like reading someone else's diary. Then I removed myself, one by one. No notifications sent. The family photo folder sat in the cloud drive under the name Moments That Matter. Most of them were from Caroline's wedding, Jack's baptism, Christmas mornings I wasn't in. One labelled Thanksgiving 29 had me at the edge of the frame mid-blink. I revoked access from my account, closed the tab. That was enough. The cafe on 9th and Oak still had the wooden table with the carved initials. Not mine. Someone else's memory. I used to bring my laptop there just to feel like I belonged to something slower. That afternoon, I brought only a pen. Wrote the message on a torn piece from an old envelope. Mon kanya manque, con se song teo ket ring. No punctuation. My phone buzzed twice, then stopped. I didn't check who it was. The drawer in my apartment top, right under the receipts, held the printout of the 2002 reunion invitation. Beige with navy trim. Hosted by Caroline and family in Block Serif. No room for ambiguity. I folded it once, not to throw away, just to reduce its shape, then placed it back into the drawer and left it there. There's a red scarf in my closet still smelling faintly of eucalyptus from the time I loaned it to Helen during a cold spell. She returned it without a word. The fold was different. She always folded in thirds. This time it was in half, like she didn't want to remember how I used to do it. I pulled the scarf down, ran my fingers along the hem. A thread was loose, barely visible, unless held against the light. At the end of all of it, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't knock on doors or write a final letter. I just took the thread and let it go. And for the first time, nothing needed explaining. Some spaces feel unfamiliar, not because they're new, but because no one else's voice lives in them yet. The floor was uneven near the window. I noticed it when the mug tilted ever so slightly on the folded shirt I was using as a nightstand. The mattress had no frame, just fabric over concrete with a thin layer of insulation that made the room echo at night. I didn't bring much. 3 boxes, 2 suitcases, and a rolled canvas bag with cords and adapters I hadn't untangled in years. No framed photographs, no porcelain gifts, just what I knew I would use. The walls were freshly painted, but smelled faintly of something older, like dust and citrus cleaner layered over decisions that once mattered. There were small flecks of dried paint on the windowsill. I ran my thumbnail over them without picking. For a table, I stretched an old burlap cloth over a pair of stacked crates. It used to wrap candles I shipped during my first contract job. Now it held a chipped plate, one fork, and a teacup with a crack that hadn't reached the rim. The bread I toasted that morning burned slightly at the edge. I didn't scrape it. The bitterness paired well with the mint. The email from Jared came short without pleasantries. "You okay?" I typed slowly. "Chưa rõ. Nhưng lần đầu tiên mình thấy nhẹ." Then I closed the laptop. There's a habit I hadn't noticed until the silence I hum, when I'm not sure what to say. Soft, tuneless, just enough to keep the air from settling too still. In that room, the sound had nowhere to go. It circled back like a question. At night, I slept without curtains. The streetlight outside cast shadows that moved like water across the ceiling. No footsteps above. No voices through the wall. Just the creak of my own shifting weight and the occasional sigh of the building settling into itself. There's a small hook on the back of the bathroom door. I hung nothing on it. I think I wanted it to stay that way a while, just one thing left open, unclaimed. I didn't decorate. I didn't light candles or press linen, but in that quiet, I didn't wait for permission to breathe. It wasn't comfort yet, but it didn't need to apologize for being mine. Sometimes your name only echoes when it's convenient. The call came just as I was refolding the corners of a shipping box. The flaps wouldn't stay down unless I pressed a hand on each side. I didn't answer at first. The number was familiar, but unfamiliar things live inside familiar rings. Her voice arrived without build-up. "Caroline's recovering. The twins are starting preschool. Tuition deadlines are tight this year. No mention of how I was. No pause to leave space for one." I stared at a rubber band on the table, looped twice around itself. It had snapped once near the edge and been tied back together in a small knot that tugged unevenly when stretched. "Still usable, just not quite the same," she continued. "If you're in a position to contribute, it could help ease things. You always had a good heart." The last part wasn't a compliment. It was a setup. I remembered a green envelope that arrived at my apartment the week before, addressed to Whitaker Family Sponsorship, but bearing my personal mailbox number. Inside, 2 scholarship confirmations signed and sealed, both with my name listed under donor acknowledgement. I had not signed anything. The text from Caroline followed later that afternoon. "If you'd like to be part of things again, this is a simple way to rebuild trust." It's not too late. There was no anger in the phrasing, just calculation dressed as civility. I pulled open the side drawer, the one that still held leftover ribbons from last year's client packages. One was navy blue, creased at both ends. I ran it between my fingers until the fabric curled softly in my palm, then let it rest on the desk. I thought of the time I was 10 and offered to share my last cookie at a family picnic. Caroline took it, broke it in half, handed the smaller piece back to me. "Be generous," she said. I nodded. Even then. There's a difference between being remembered and being needed. One leaves room for return. The other only opens the door wide enough to fit your usefulness. The phone didn't ring again. Some invitations are just instructions in disguise. Change doesn't always come in loud turns. It shows up in where you place the cup. The second-floor unit had one window that didn't open and one that opened too far. We kept the stubborn one shut and tied a cloth ribbon to the other so it wouldn't slam in the wind. Rachel brought in a diffuser shaped like a pebble. Jared printed a list of keyboard shortcuts and taped it to the mini fridge. Our coffee machine hissed like an old radiator. Every morning it wheezed twice before letting the espresso out. I liked the predictability of it. The water always warmed slowly, never in a rush. I'd stand beside it, turning the teaspoon in my hand until the first scent of steam reached me. The desk I worked on came in 4 boxes. I put it together on a Sunday, ignoring the manual. The back panel is crooked if you look close, but it holds. I placed a clay pot of sage in the corner, leaves soft and grey-green. A friend once told me sage grew best in neglected soil. I'm not sure if it's true, but I don't overwater it. My calendar hangs on the corkboard, not for meetings, but for boundaries. A red mark means no. I don't move those anymore. Ethan stops by on Fridays. He never stays long, just brings lunch grilled grouper in parchment or rice with shaved ginger from the place down the hill. He doesn't ask where I've been. He doesn't fill silences. When he leaves, he folds the paper bag and sets it beside the door like it might be reused. There's a mirror in the restroom with a corner chip. I used to glance away from reflections, unsure of the angle, the expression, the weight. Now I look longer. Not to check anything, just to witness. Last week, Rachel mentioned Caroline in passing. I didn't flinch. I didn't change the subject. I just nodded and reached for a binder. The air didn't shift. I keep a white porcelain cup on my desk. No chips. No logo. I bought it from a thrift store without knowing why. Now it holds exactly the amount of tea I drink in one sitting. That feels like enough reason. There's a folded scarf in my drawer that I haven't touched since the move. Not out of avoidance, just no longer out of need. I used to wait for signs that I belonged. Now I decide where I'll stand. Some steadiness isn't built, it's chosen. Closure doesn't always look like a door shutting. It's the quiet when you stop waiting for footsteps. The envelope had no return stamp. I folded it once, not out of habit, but to reduce its presence. Inside 3 pages printed on plain white paper, single-spaced, no salutation, no sign-off. Just facts. Just what needed to be said. The post office smelled faintly of toner and dried glue. I waited in line behind a man holding a bubble-wrapped box, tracing the edge of the envelope with my thumb. The clerk didn't ask for identification. I slid the letter forward and paid in cash. That felt important. The address was written by hand. I used block letters, the kind taught in 3rd grade. My wrist trembled near the W in Whittaker. I didn't fix it. There's a drawer in my desk where I kept a prepaid phone used only for transactions tied to the old accounts. I pulled the SIM card out that morning and dropped it into a cup of cold tea. It floated briefly before sinking like something still resisting purpose. The bank app required a code I hadn't used in weeks. I typed it slowly, deleted the linked profiles, cancelled auto payments, revoked access to fund routing aliases. The screen blinked twice before clearing. One of the scholarship confirmations still sat in my downloads folder. I opened it, not to review, just to see the alignment of names. The bolded section read, Donor B. Whittaker Private Support Initiative. I pressed delete and emptied the trash. The lavender stem I'd dried weeks ago had begun to flake at the tip. I laid it on the desk beside the now muted phone. It didn't smell much anymore, just the shape remained. 4 years of quiet contribution, rerouted through initials, shell firms, and unsigned checks. None of it ever acknowledged. That had once been the point. Now the silence served another function. The message in the letter was short. Tôi xin rút lại toàn bộ quyền tài trợ. Từ nay mọi việc liên quan đến tôi xin đừng tu quyết định thế. No explanation. Just an ending shaped like a boundary. I opened the drawer where I'd stored unsent drafts, half-typed apologies, paused clarifications, rebuttals that softened into nothing. I scrolled through them all, then selected delete all. No confirmation needed. The screen dimmed. There's a kind of stillness that doesn't ache. It just holds. Some goodbyes are only complete when nothing follows them. The moment I stopped needing to be understood was the moment everything began to fit. The kettle lets off a sound softer than steam, more like an exhale. I pour slowly, letting the water curve over the tea leaves without rushing them. The scent rises in layers, citrus, bergamot, something almost like memory, but without weight. The porch floor creaks in the same place each time I step onto it. Not loud enough to startle, just enough to remind me it's real wood, not veneer. I watered the lavender today using a chipped green can someone left here months ago. The spout leaks if tilted too far left. I never fix it. Jared arrives first, carrying a paper bag under his arm and humming a song I've never heard but recognize. Rachel follows a bottle of wine cradled in one elbow, balancing a loaf wrapped in brown paper against her ribs. They don't knock anymore. There's a drawer in the cabinet now that holds matching white porcelain plates. I bought them the day after I mailed the final letter. 6 of them. No occasion in mind, just enough to feel prepared. Ethan comes later with a rescue pup tucked in his arms, still damp from its bath. The collar is 2 big slips sideways when it turns its head. He lays a folded towel down before setting it on the tile. It curls instantly like it already knows safety. At the table, someone, young his name might be Theo, or maybe Max, leans in with a fork, paused mid-air. Do you ever wish they'd seen it? What you built. I let the question stay on the table a moment, then pour another cup. Không được công nhận bởi người khác, không có nghĩa là mình không có giá trị. He doesn't respond, just nods like he's tucking something away for later. The bread breaks with a soft crackle, scattering crumbs across the wood. Rachel wipes them gently with the edge of her sleeve. No one minds the mess. Sunlight shifts across the tile, drawing long lines under the table legs. For a second, everything becomes framed in gold, the plates, the glass, the hands reaching across for olives and herbs. No performance. No instruction. Near the kitchen, a map hangs in a narrow frame. Colored pins mark places I've never been, but helped someone else reach. El Paso, Albany, Tacoma, a small dot just added in Burlington drawn with ink where the pins ran out. I open my notebook and write not as a headline, not as a summary, just a line meant for no one's approval. Ngày thu mà cho chân Whitey said, không cần được hiểu, nhưng vẫn song du day. Some truths don't need an audience, they only need room.